Hi, I'm Alan Tepper. Today on Beyond Podcasting, we'll be discussing branded RSS in the era of platform expulsion.
Thanks for tuning in to BeyondPodcasting.com, where we recognize that your online radio show is much more than just a podcast.
Your show can be broadcast live, which is not a podcast. Your show can be heard on a website, which isn't a podcast either.
Of course, your online radio show can and should also be syndicated as a podcast via RSS, where your listeners can subscribe using a standard podcatcher or your show's own branded app for Android and iOS.
BeyondPodcasting.com covers microphones, interfaces, mixers, production software, recording techniques, best practices, and more. Now enjoy another episode of BeyondPodcasting.com with your host, Alan Tepper.
You're listening to Beyond Podcasting. I'm Alan Tepper in the studio in Miami, Florida, and we have Chris Curran of Podcast Engineering School from Colorado, I believe Colorado Springs. Is that correct, Chris?
That's right, Colorado Springs, about an hour south of Denver, right at the foot of Pikes Peak.
Very interesting. Well, Chris has already become a regular since this is the second time that he's coming on Beyond Podcasting, so welcome back, Chris Curran.
Happy to be here.
If you would understand the joke, I might say, welcome back, Cotter.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Cotter.
Mr. Cotter, exactly. Well, today we're here to talk about something different, something that we haven't talked about before on Beyond Podcasting. And the name of the show is Branded RSS in the Era of Platform Expulsion. And that requires lots of explanation. And Chris, of course, is the man behind Podcast Engineering School. And he's really, really good in audio recording and post-production, but he's a podcaster. And I wanted to have a friendly podcaster with me to stop me when I say things that are too complex and need some explanation. So that's why I asked Chris to come with us today. And I appreciate it, Chris, that you're here.
I should have brought my whistle. I could blow my whistle when I want to stop you.
Yes, yes. Even though your sidekick, Barry, is not there, I might occasionally stop and say, what would Barry say because of this situation or something like that?
Yeah.
Several things need explanation here before we get into the nitty-gritty. And some of the newbies in this medium might be asking at the very, very beginning, what's an RSS? So let's talk about that a little bit for a minute, and then we'll go forward from there. And I like to make some analogies as we go along. There's the official words that come behind it, which is rich site summary, although a lot of people just call it real simple syndication. And even though that's not the official name for it, I like that nickname that it has because it has to do with syndication. And if we do the analogy of a conventional AM or FM radio station, Chris, have you ever visited one in your history?
Yeah, a few times. Actually, once when I was in Cub Scouts when I was real young. But in my adult life, yeah, a few times I've been to radio stations.
In fact, you just brought the memory. I knew I had gone as a kid, but I didn't remember, and I think it probably was with Cub Scouts also.
Yeah.
That's great to know. Well, I like to make the distinction that if you're in the lobby, if you haven't come in back to the part where the offices and the studios are, because there's usually a lobby, and there's usually a big speaker on the wall. And that speaker was just a speaker. It was connected to their board and their master control, where you would hear what's being broadcast. It wasn't a radio. It was the actual signal of the radio before it went out to the transmitter. So when people come in, depending on how you set up your show, of course, but at least with mine, when people come in, they visit directly on my website and they press play, it's like they're in the lobby of the radio station. It hasn't gone through RSS. It hasn't been syndicated, and that's why I like that nickname, because it includes the word syndication. Because, of course, we always want our shows to be syndicated on lots of different platforms. And, of course, the popular platforms include what used to be called iTunes, and now it's gradually being converted into Apple Podcasts, and now Google Podcasts, and TuneIn, Stitcher, all these different platforms, because we want to be heard as many places as possible. So my analogy is, when you're sitting in the lobby of the radio station, it's like when you're on the website, at least the way mine is set up in it. It may be different to the way each individual person sets it up, because some of the people set up the website so that it's actually using a player that is connected through RSS. So it depends how it's set up, but at least the way mine is, it's playing the MP3 directly. So it's kind of like being in the lobby of the radio station.